Greetings builders! How was your dinner last night? I hope you all had a beautiful family reunion and are opening many great presents today. Since it's Monday, I'm here with the traditional meta builds video with some of the most played builds during the third week of the Affliction League. As always, if you wanna try any of those, you can find links for POBs and complete guides in the video description. Let's start this video with a build that I'm sure is going to be interesting for most of you guys, because it's one of the most played at the moment, the Cyclone of Tumult Slayer with the Duelist class.
This new PoE expansion brought the transfigure gems with it. This means an alternative version of active steel gems. The Cyclone skill got the Cyclone of Tumult, that is a Cyclone wider and more powerful, but with the downside of being a lot slower. However, with an easy trick we can remove this downside and simply have a Cyclone with 33% more damage and 40% more area of effect. To list the pros of this build, I would start with its clear speed. It's just amazing to be always moving and massacring all the poor enemies on the way. The boss damage is also incredible. Once the build is done, you are going to kill even the big bosses in just a matter of seconds. And above all of that, this build is very simple and easy to put together. Now, to list the cons, I would point a few important issues and I'd like to ask you to pay close attention here. You see, this build has a great survivability once it's done, but when you're leveling your character you need to pace your progression, because you're always very close to enemies. If you're not prepared, you are going to die. So take the extra time to pick up a few more levels before progressing to a high tier content. Another useful tip about your survivability is how to deal with stuns. On this build we get stun immunity with a charm on the new Wildwood Primalist Ascendancy. It is super cheap and easy to get, but if you forget it, you're going to have a bad time. As for budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 90 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps you need to invest around 115 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas I recommend investing around 6 divines. Don't forget that on PoEbuilds.net you can find a list with all the equipment that you need to buy for this build, with direct links for examples being sold by other players. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Stampede boots that guarantee that your movement speed will always be 150% of its pace. This means that the downside of Cyclone of Tumult will mean absolutely nothing to us. For clear speed I'll give it 9 out of 10. Cyclone never stops moving and have a huge area of effect, so you can farm your maps without the need to stop for casting or anything like that. It's just awesome and very satisfying. The boss damage is just amazing and deserves 10 out of 10. When this build is done, you're going to easily achieve over 15 million DPS, that is more than enough to destroy bosses in just seconds. Now for the survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This build achieves over 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion, spell suppression, fortify, and a lot of instant life leech. Now, with the huge area of effect bonus from Cyclone of Tumult, you don't even need to stay very close to enemies on endgame, what gives you even more survivability.
Next, we have a classic starter build that can clear most content with low investment, the Toxic Rain Pathfinder with the Ranger class.
This build uses the permafrost and chaos damage of Pathfinder to deploy many powerful pods that drain the life out of your enemies. To list the pros of this build, I would start with how easy it is to put together. You don't need any mandatory unique item and the leveling is very simple. Another great feature of this build is that your flasks are going to stay up all the time, even on boss fights, and the life regeneration from your life flask will be eternal, making the damage over time look like a joke to you. This build is great for beginners because you end up having great clear, boss damage and survivability with low investment. Now to list the cons, the main issue of this build is mana. Since we are dealing with a damage over time build, we cannot reach mana or life. Because of that issue we need rare rings that reduce the mana cost of skills. As for budget, you can get it destroying early in-game maps with only around 100 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, you need to invest around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines, but you can totally do it with less. For clear speed, this build gets 9 out of 10. As a Pathfinder, your Quicksilver and Silver flasks are going to have more effect and be up 100% of the time, granting a lot of attack and movement speed. Also, you only need to deploy the pods once and they will drain surrounding enemies, granting a smooth gameplay. The boss damage also gets 9 out of 10. Combining your strength with Toxic Rain totems, bosses just drawing countless pods. even the big bosses are going to melt like butter before your eyes. For this survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This is because this build has high evasion, high armor and spell suppression. Also, your defensive classes have more effect and are up all the time, even on bosses. Above all, you can use Toxic Rank from a safe distance and its spots heavily slow down enemies.
Finally, we have the super fast and strong Flicker Strike Slayer with the Duelist class.
This build uses Terminus S to sustain the frenzy charges needed for you to keep flickering. It's a great and simple Flicker Strike build for beginners. To use the pros of this build, I would have to start with its clear speed. Look at that, this is just insanely fast. It also counts with an awesome boss damage and instant life leech. And of course, flicker builds are just super cool. Now, to list the cons, I would start with the fact that you're always very close to enemies, which puts you in a vulnerable position. Another issue is that you have little control over your character, making it hard on bosses where you need to mind your position or attack the right enemy. As for budget, you can get it destroying early in-game maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, you need to invest around 120 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. You need only one mandatory unique item for this build, the Terminus S sword that keeps your frenzy charges up even while flickering. For clear speed, this build is surely a 10 out of 10, and I don't even need to say anything, just take a look at the gameplay and you have to agree with me. The boss damage is great and deserves 9 out of 10. This build can easily deal many millions of damage per second, it's just great to kill big bosses like that. Now for the survivability, I'd only give it 8 out of 10. Even though this build still has almost 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion and spell suppression, I had to take 2 points out for the same reason as I did with the Cyclone Slayer. Since you're always very close to enemies, you're always in a vulnerable position. And that's it for today, guys. Have you tried any of those meta builds? Please don't forget to tell me your thoughts in the comments and leave a thumbs up to support the channel. I wish you guys a Merry Christmas and don't forget to keep building!